Welcome to Worldie Unboxed, the Founders Edition. We're excited to bring you another two-part episode, this time featuring Krystina Dowdell, the visionary founder of Getaway, a community platform dedicated to providing accessible healthcare through free virtual and in-person events. In this first part, Krystina shares her motivations for starting Getaway, the impact it has had on communities, and the hurdles she's faced as an entrepreneur. Next week, in part two, Aaron and I will discuss our takeaways from our conversation with Krystina and how her insights relate to our own experiences at Worldie. Stay connected with us by joining our community at worldiebrand.com and subscribing to the Worldie YouTube channel for clips and highlights from our conversations. All right, let's talk to Krystina.
So are you working on your business full time, or do you have kind of multiple things that you're working on?
I'm working on it full time right now. I left my startup that I was helping out it was during the summer of last year. So a couple of months full time on this now. But then we started it back in 2020. Like first event was January 4th, and then pandemic happened, shut down. We tried to do some virtual things. But that just gave me some time to like wrap my head around the model and what we were actually trying to do, because at that point it was still like we're doing community events and trying to just base it off ticket sales, and I really wanted to build it beyond that. So I think yeah, the last few months has been nice to just focus on this completely.
So what kind of events do you organize?
So we call them retreats. They are health events. A lot of them are free. I'd say like 90% of them are free, and they're across Miami, Denver, and Las Vegas. Las Vegas will launch this month, but we started Denver last year, and then Miami obviously was the first one. A lot of them are like fitness classes, yoga classes, meditation classes. The idea around it is to like provide accessible healthcare, preventative care in a way that like comes to the person. So we work with like residential buildings, property management groups, and then we host the one-off events, either annual events or group getaways, or the international retreats. So we have one coming up in Honduras, we have one coming up in Colorado, have Nicaragua in the summer, have Mexico in the fall, and then Costa Rica again in the fall.
And then you might have touched on this a little bit, but how do you guys make money? Because you said that the events are free. So is it from sponsors, or how, like what's the revenue model?
So a lot of them are free, and then yeah, the revenue model for the free events will come from the brands that want to partner with us. So they'll do little pop-ups and activations at each of the different free events. And then we do have two different service sides that are subscription based. So one is for the creators and collaborators that work with us, and the other side is like a more one-on-one activation with any of the brands that we work with. So we kind of develop a go-to-market campaign around their experiential goals and things like that.
And then you were talking a little bit about your background before. So it sounds like you were a trainer, you're a digital nomad for a while. So like how did that all kind of point you towards entrepreneurship, or how did you get interested in starting your own company?
Um, I think I got excited coming off of being a personal trainer. Like I liked having control over my own schedule. I liked helping people. So those two things together, I knew I wanted to go beyond that. Like in 2020, I was fully virtual with like my own schedule of personal training clients. And I still had the desire to want to like help more people. And I was already doing the events with the Miami retreat. So I'm like, okay, let me figure out how to build this beyond that. And I did have a curiosity around technology and coding. So started teaching myself how to code, me and ChatGPT, a lot of hours have been spent together, just hashing it out. So I think that has all come together to build what is now Getaway.
And then I guess like how do you pitch Getaway? Like when you're explaining it, what's the kind of like elevator pitch?
It really depends who I'm talking to. I mean, the ultimate goal is we want to do impact at scale around healthcare. So, our goal is to hit 1 million free health events by 2048. Very big, obnoxious goal that I think is very important because, especially here in the States, healthcare is just not that great. It's not that accessible. It's not that affordable. So whatever small part that we can do through events, through connecting the right people with the right people, residents with the right coaches, brands with the right events, all that good stuff kind of comes together to help complete that goal.
And then are these events, is it mainly people who live in the city who come to the event, or is there kind of a travel aspect to it as well?
For the free events, it's mostly regional, and then we promote the one-off events across each of the different cities. So yeah, everyone has their own event schedule. Miami's got its own event schedule, Denver and Las Vegas. And then the one-off events are promoted throughout those communities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And then when did you kind of realize that maybe there's something to this idea? Because a lot of people who are entrepreneurial, we have all these different ideas, but we don't necessarily go after all of them. So when did you decide to go after this idea? And when did you realize that there's kind of something to it?
I would say it hit me right as I got to that point of like what I considered success for a personal trainer. I had a full virtual schedule and I still had that desire to want to do more and do it within the event setting. So I figured with my background in the health space, the training space, the coaching space, as well as all my experience from working with like conglomerates like Informa, these different SaaS startups that I've been helping with their go-to-market campaigns. I wanted to put all that together. And yeah, just try and build it as far as I could.
And I know you were mentioning kind of like Chat GPT and teaching yourself how to code. Like, what does it take to get a company like this off the ground?
Persistence is, everything, I think, when it comes to all the different obstacles that you face, whether it's relationships and making sure that, you're not stressing the people out around you that you love too much, and make sure they understand any of the learning curves like coding. I think because I like creating stuff and building things, I enjoyed learning coding. So I think that's why I stuck it out so long. And yeah, that's
And then what's the like what needs to be coded, I guess, because at least to me it seems like you could run that business just kind of like, for me, like I don't know anything about coding. So if I had to
No.
run your business, I wouldn't kind of learn how to code. So why did you decide to do that? And I guess how are you running your business? Is it on an app, on a website?
Yep, it's an app. And you're absolutely right. This could totally be done with just like email, Zapier, and call it at that. I think for the scale at which we're trying to go, having one central point of automation and just like resource hub is everything. And I like to make it fun, so I wanted to try and like gamify some elements and really make that a part of the experience when anyone's working with Getaway.
And then do you have a team at all, or is it you and then maybe you hire contractors for little things here or there?
Mostly me, and then hire contractors here and there. I do have a team that helps me out with the events. They are contractors. We call them co-creators because we could not do without them. That inspired the name behind Co-Creator Studios, which is the creative incubator and that service side of things for the coaches and creators. So yeah, mostly me.
And then something, because we talked to a lot of founders in the consumer space, and there's this kind of distinction between product-led companies and founder-led companies. And me and my co-founder have kind of gone back and forth on what we want to be. Would you say that you're kind of like the face of your company, or is it more driven by the events?
It's driven by the events in the sense of like, I I try to stay in the background as much as possible, and all of our creators I try to put forward. So they're kind of like the face of each of the events, and then I would say that I would say in that case more like product, but
Yep, that makes sense. And then when we first talked, or I think it was when I was asking for a podcast guest, you mentioned events as a service and you abbreviated it as EAAS. And I was kind of like, what is that? I have no idea. And I had to ask you. So is that a developed space? Do most people know what that is, or is there a lot of kind of like education that you have to do?
I don't think it's super developed in like as framed in that way. I like it because I just want people to understand that we're technology enabled in what we do. Like events as a service already exists kind of as a space, whether it's like the corporate side of things, go to market, that world. But for like the creator, gig economy, those kinds of things, we want to tailor it more towards them and show that we're like, we work with multiple platforms. We work with, we have our own platform, but we have knowledge of the different platforms that they work with and integrate into those platforms. So I think it's just another way of showcasing that like this very in-person world of events is definitely headed towards a more technology enabled side of things.
And then, so for us, it's important to kind of like build community and mentors. So people who are building in similar spaces. So for us, it's pretty easy, right? It's like people who are building other shoe companies, maybe apparel companies, and then more broadly, kind of like consumer. For you, I guess, how do you find people who are doing something similar to you or have already done something similar to you? Is that easy? Is it harder? Because I wouldn't necessarily know how to go about doing that if I were in your shoes.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's super hard to find. Like you do have to do some legwork to find people in this space. It's not like readily available. If you're talking about creators who host events or creators who host retreats and are looking at the corporate side of things, they're definitely out there, and I've connected with them through just, reaching out, and really interesting group and community. And a lot of them are digital nomads, a lot of them are into like that lifestyle. So it's been very cool to like embed myself further into that world.
And then is community kind of a part of your strategy at all? Because it sounds like kind of like digital nomads might be interested in some of these different events. So I guess, how are you thinking about social media, community building, just to kind of get your name out there?
Definitely relying on social media a good bit and relying on that community a good bit. They're very well connected, so that kind of makes it easier on me. Then they kind of have to be, because they're kind of, they're all over the world. There's not really like one central point. Like there are apps that are coming out like NomadGo, for finding your groups and your people. There's another one called Outside that's really cool, that targets remote workers specifically, that includes the community aspect. So there's definitely places out there, and I think you're just going to see more and more of that happening, but you do have to do a little bit of legwork to find it initially.
And how would you define your target customer or user, however you want to, say it?
Remote workers who value that lifestyle, just whether it's as a digital nomad, or they like take different weeks off and they want to go stay in Tulum for 2 weeks, and that's how they go about it. Any variation of that lifestyle. On the creator side of that world, who want to lead and produce for that community.
So is it people who are already pretty healthy and pretty health focused, or is it people who are maybe a bit more sedentary and want to get more active, or is it both?
I'd say it's both, just because our free event series across the 3 cities here in the States targets, whoever's just at our partner properties. And then the international getaways and retreats and camps target more of that digital nomad community who may already be like more into fitness or health related things.
And then just naturally, do you get a lot of people posting about the experience on social media? Because it seems like it just lends itself to user-generated content.
Oh yeah, I mean for our private, so the only thing with the residential properties is we try not to make too much content because it's just like a private setting. But with the public events, it does naturally just generate a whole lot of user-generated content.
And then how many events have you planned to date, and how many people have kind of gone to these different events?
I would say so over the last in 2023, we hit over 100 events between Miami and Denver and Columbia. And then over the course of 3 years, around like 1,000 people we've been able to get over to our events.
And would you say that you have competitors in this space, or is this not really a space where you think about competition like that?
I mean, there's definitely competitors in the event space in that like if you're lining up our free series with other events in the area, you have that version of competition. And then as far as like one platform that's doing um retreat type events, like you have Retreat Hub, you have Selena, I think, and then like they're definitely out there. And I think where we stand out is that we can kind of hit both and also have an impact side of things where we want to give back, we want to help local regions, and we do that actively.
Got it. And I was going to ask, how do you approach this space differently? But it sounds like basically you just answered it. So is there anything else you didn't touch on that you feel like differentiates your company?
I think because we focus on creators so much and the coaches, it gives us a little bit of an edge when it comes to cultivating their communities and helping them reach the ones that we've already kind of been able to connect with. So putting the creator at the center stage for each of the events, I think is a little different than just a typical like, oh, here's a venue, here's the activities. It's all inclusive, it's super fun, but the personal element, I think is where we stand out.
And I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier. Basically, you're passionate about making travel more accessible. So how do you, I guess, how do you do that with Getaway?
I'd say primarily through the coaches and the creators. So we provide resources, we provide the development suite to help, say, a coach who wants to lead her own retreat know what she would need, know any information around itinerary planning, production, that kind of stuff, provide services on site if we need to. So I think that's, yeah.
And why do you think travel is not accessible now? Is it a cost thing? Is it a knowledge thing? Is it people maybe just being intimidated to do some of these things that might seem difficult or strenuous? What do you think the main issue is?
I think it's a combination of all of those for sure. Like it's definitely not cheap to head out to some of these areas. There's the intimidation factor. There's just a lot of planning that goes into it, and that takes a lot of time. Um, the area, if you don't know a whole lot about the area and that information is not readily available, can definitely keep some people away from taking a trip somewhere. And yeah.
And then are you guys just kind of building on that? Are you thinking about content at all as a way to maybe people aren't going to go to events, but you can bring them to your social media page by telling them like, hey, if you live in, I don't know, Las Vegas, here's some weekend trips, or here's like trips that are within a couple hours flight, things like that.
We do have like a little library of different set trips of different areas. So like Arizona, Las Vegas, Colorado, Vancouver, a lot of the places that I personally visited, Miami, obviously. And I do have a whole YouTube channel of all of our travels and what a lot of those hikes look like, a lot of the outdoor activities. And I want to get more into the educational side of like trip planning itself so that other people can, just up and go whenever.
And then the social media stuff that you do, if you're kind of like documenting your journey while you're traveling, is that something you did before, or is that something that you only started once you had your own company?
Documenting my whole journey.
I just mean like, so if you go on a trip and I think I saw this on your social media, but maybe it's like a hike and you're taking a video of the hike and saying, okay, this is one of my favorite hikes, for example. Is that something you did before, or is that only something you started once you had your own company?
No, I was taking videos of pretty much everything prior to Getaway and the retreats. I think I have like on this phone right now 30,000 pictures and videos, and then I'm sure well over 100,000 total. I just love sharing, like creating and sharing my experiences, and yeah, trying to invite people into that as well.
The reason I ask is because like I hate social media. So for me, like I only got Instagram a couple weeks ago for my
Oh, no
business
way.
to kind of like
Yeah.
create and share. And I hadn't posted on LinkedIn at all until I started posting for my business. So I was just gonna ask, like, do you have any, because I want to do more and more and do more kind of like video content and behind the scenes content. So do you have any recommendations as someone who enjoys doing that for someone who is maybe like old or hates doing it like myself?
I'm gonna have to go off of, I used to listen to Gary Vaynerchuk all the time, and that like create versus document mindset. I would say just focused on documenting and not getting so wrapped up around, oh, it should look this way or it should be, production level quality. I think just getting it out there is super important, and sharing it and a lot like that. Just the act of doing that gives somebody else the permission to do it, gets them involved and into your world. So I think that's, yeah, that I would take that mindset.
And then I guess what are your thoughts on building in public? Is that something that you're doing? Is that something that you're interested in? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's a great idea. I don't think everything needs to be public. Um, but I would say like sharing the journey as a founder, like just the challenges in like a generic sense is super important. I don't think I do that enough, to be honest. And like my LinkedIn is very focused on like event marketing, experiential design, and that kind of stuff. But I would totally be up for like sharing more of my struggles as like a founder and the whole entrepreneurship journey. And yeah, I think I'm all for that.
Yeah, everyone says to do it, but it's a lot of work. That's the thing. Like it takes a lot of time. I saw that you're a top voice for like I want to say event planning on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. And I tried to become a top voice for something, but it was way too much work and I couldn't get it. So I think you just got to pick your spots and figure out what's easy for you to kind of like share and what doesn't take a ton of extra time. Because if you spend all your time building in public, then you're not going to be able to actually build your business. So I think that's something that is it's different for everybody and it's just hard. So everyone has to figure out what works for them.
100%.
And then what's your long-term vision for Getaway?
Ideally, I'd like to hit that 1 million free events by 2048. That'd be amazing. Are we gonna hit it? I don't know, because it's somewhere around $145 million a year to produce that many free events in the in-person sense. We've switched this year to a lot more virtual events to try and cut it down, but I think that impact would be amazing to be able to provide that many um touch points for preventative care is super important. So that would be amazing.
So how do you get there? Or what are potential ways that you get there? Because it seems like it's a lofty goal. It seems doable, but it seems lofty. So like what has to go right, I guess? Or what are the things that you have to accomplish in order to get there?
I would need to make a lot of friends with a lot of property management companies. We have a lot of friends already, which we're very grateful for. We work with asset living and for service residential right now. So making a lot more connections in that space would be incredible. And whatever subdivision of that area, um, as well, whether it's like other co-working spaces or community spaces and things like that.
And then when you think about 1 million, you said 1 million events by 2048, right? 1 million free events.
Yeah.
So when you think about that and there might have to be some expansion, right, in terms of what you're offering. So would it be different geographies? Would it be maybe different categories? Like, how would you think about expansion?
Definitely different geographies. We have some cities here in the States that we're thinking of, and then internationally, I want to expand next year to like Egypt, Italy, Greece, and a couple other places. But focusing on getting in more cities here and then internationally as we go.
And then would you ever consider, because people ask us this all the time, just because subscriptions are kind of trending, would you ever consider trying to incorporate some kind of subscription aspect into your business, or does it not really make sense?
We do have two subscription-based services, one for the creators and then one for the brands. Nothing crazy because I've seen some contracts that can get wild out there. The creator subscription is very similar to like a Netflix, so like $15 a month, you get access to a video library and one-on-one support. And then for the brand, same thing, but on the production side, so like a production concierge, depending on the level of activation that they want to do.
And then is it right that you're bringing essentially like three different types of people together? You mentioned brands, creators, and then event goers. Is that right? Or
At like the high level, I'd say brands, creators, and then like community leaders, coaches, and things like that.
okay, so is that difficult kind of trying to build something for all those different parties that might have, because I know like a two-way market is supposed to be super hard. So if you have like a three or four-way market, it seems like that might be super difficult.
I think because I've been in each of the spaces personally, I know which each person looks for. From my corporate background with the event industry and then my personal training side of things, and then even as a creator myself. So I get their pain points kind of at an intimate level, and I feel like I can speak to that whenever I'm, creating a campaign or trying to reach out to them.
And then is this a business that you would want to basically focus on for the rest of your career, or is this something that you'd want to take a step back, maybe still like own it, but take a step back from eventually and do something else?
I'd love to be involved with it for like the duration of my career. If there's somebody better fit to run one area or another, like I'm not opposed to that. I'm just one person. I'm not good at everything. So, I think that's important to keep an open mind to other people stepping in, especially as we're building a team and things like that. So so long as I'm in it, involved in some way, I'm happy.
And then these are just going to be more kind of like general entrepreneurship questions, but what would you say is your biggest learning so far in terms of entrepreneurship?
I would say taking funding early is not going to solve all of your problems, or looking for funding early will not solve all your problems, because I had a very generous angel investor and good friend invest last year, and we still had to come back to the drawing board. So I would say, not looking for funding right off the bat or relying on that too heavily if like the model's not fully developed, I guess. And yeah, that was one of the biggest, because I listen to all these podcasts with founders and things like that, and they're all kind of zeroed in on finding their VC, finding their first round. And it's definitely a huge asset in the long run for sure. But I think a lot of people may get into it a little early, because I've heard a lot of stories about like relying too much on that cash, relying too much on that side of things.
So if you were to do it over again, how would you approach funding? Would you have tried to basically not raise until you realized that there was kind of like product market fit and you'd made a lot of the mistakes that you felt like you were going to make? Or like how would you think about that? How would you approach that?
Maybe shift how I allocated some of the funds differently, because I still have then arrived at the same point and with some of the decisions that I made, which were all super insightful, some learning lessons and things, but a lot of the progress that we made in the last year would not have happened. So I guess it's like two sides to that. Like, don't look for it too early, but if it makes sense and it's gonna check off some boxes that you need to check off, then just make sure it's with the right person for the right reasons.
So what's been the hardest part so far in your journey, or just in terms of being an entrepreneur? What's the hardest thing that you've dealt with?
Learning when to say no. I think it's very easy to want to be very opportunistic and positive and optimistic, and you kind of have to be that way. Over time, though, I've gotten involved in relationships or partnerships that maybe weren't the best fit. So I think learning to take a step back and just say, hey, I'll hold on to that thought, think about it, get back to you, or just saying no outright when maybe it's not a good matchup. That was very hard for me because I'm naturally very optimistic and I want to say yes to everything and be collaborative. But you learn quick when things just don't work out the way you're expecting them to.
Yeah, and that's a good life lesson too. I feel like entrepreneurship, it teaches you a lot of things that are, they're good for business, but they're also good for life. And I think that's a good one for life. So those are all the kind of like business questions that I have. I'm going to ask you some more kind of like personal questions just because I'm curious.
For sure.
So I know we talked a little bit about this before, but what was it like being a digital nomad? And do you feel like there's any kind of like business takeaways or learnings, like life lessons that you learned from that?
Absolutely. Coming from Miami, I had you kind of assimilate to the mindset of the area that you're in. At times, if you've been there for a very long time, at least that I've noticed, and that can maybe sometimes keep you in a very small world, I guess. So I would say getting to hop around to different places, see the different ways that people live, embed myself and my lifestyle into that and learn how to adapt accordingly really broaden my perspective on a lot of things, and I think that can apply to like business, to life, and just creating a practice around keeping an open mind, a broader perspective, and things like that.
And when would you say you developed a passion for traveling? Was that something that maybe you developed in your childhood? Was it as an adult? Is there a specific moment in time that you remember kind of developing that passion?
For sure. My dad used to take us on trips all the time, and he had a passion around culture and history and that side of things wherever we would go. So, we took like a Europe trip where we got to go see the Colosseum, see the Statue of David. And very grateful and privileged that I was able to experience that at a young age, because I think that definitely inspired it moving as I got older.
And then I think I saw that you're teaching yourself how to figure skate, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
So how's that going?
it's good. I've only fallen 3 times and they were not hard falls, so I'll take that. No injuries. I fully expect to fall more. That's okay. I learned how to skate backwards last week before this cold front, and then learned how to backwards glide on one foot. I made up my own program just off the stuff I've seen on YouTube and all my TikToks. So my next goal is to get a Salchow, which is like a version it's a simple jump, and then spin on one foot. So we will see. I have a friend who's a figure skater, so she's may come out and help me out. I'm going to teach her how to DJ. She's going to teach me how to figure skate.
Seems like a fair trade. My sister was a figure skater when we were
Oh,
kids,
cool.
and I played hockey. Basically
Oh, no
from the
way.
time I was like 4 and then I played through college. So I always take that
Wow.
for granted, but it's definitely a fun skill to have.
No, I mean, it's a mind, like, not being so intimidated by ice is such a um like, that took me a while to get over, not just on figure skating, but snowboarding too. Like, not having control and like kind of trusting that your edges are going to catch you. My boyfriend was a hockey player as well, and he'd always try and tell me things like, "Oh, you need just like when I'm snowboarding, run through it, and you'll stop eventually." I'm like, Why can't I just stop when I want to?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Well, it was fun chatting with you. We should do it again sometime.
Absolutely.